Welcome everybody. We're here to talk about Afterbirth, which is Zena Forster's dark new comedy, a play about motherhood, which is set in a psychiatric mother and baby unit and tells the story of Anne Cryer, a woman experiencing psychosis after the birth of her second child. I'm Rachel Rowe. I'm a senior researcher at Oxford University's National Perinatal Epidemiology Unit, and we partnered with the show. We were the show's academic partner. I'm joined by playwright Zena Forster and director Grace Duggan. Also with us are Afterbirth's three cast members, Samantha Robinson, who plays Anne, and Simon Darwin and Alice Villankulu, who both multi-role, playing the medics, other patients, and various family members that weave in and out of Anne's story. So welcome everybody. So I've been to Afterbirth's premiere at the North Wall in Oxford. I was blown away by it. It was fantastic, and you sold out. Congratulations, all of you. It was such a journey, and the play's only about 80 minutes long, but I couldn't get over how much there was in it. And coming out of the theatre, everybody was saying, I can't believe it. What's just happened? There was so much in that. And that leads me to my first question, which is to Zena, the writer. So Zena, for a lot of the first act, I felt like I didn't know where I was. I couldn't keep up. It was really quite unsettling. I realised after a while that I'd been plunged into Anne's psychotic head, but it took me a while to work that out. I didn't have time to laugh. I'll process what Anne was saying. If I stopped and thought about it, I think I might have missed something. So there was a lot going on. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to start the play like that?
Yeah, okay, right. Good question. So when you start writing a play, you have to make some pretty important decisions quite early on. And I really wanted to write a play about motherhood, as you know, and I knew I'd start that play with a character because that's what I always do. And then quite quickly I knew that what was going to happen to that character, that she was going to be thrown into this cruel and florid psychosis after the birth of her baby. But then you'd start thinking about what you want the play to actually say. Is it woman gets ill and dies, or woman gets ill and gets better? I mean, that's not great as an elevator pitch. So, and there's just so much more to it. So I knew I wanted to talk about the disadvantages that women face when they become mothers. And I wanted to challenge the stigma around mental illness. So then what have I got? I've got psychosis, patriarchy, prejudice. And like, this is supposed to be a comedy with a song. So it's just like too heavy. So then I go round and round in circles, and I realise that what I need to do is to go back to what I always go back to, character. Because of course these horrible things aren't funny, but my character is funny. Now I really love Anne. I love writing for her because she's so, you just can't put her down. She, no matter what you throw at her, she's so resilient. She's like razor sharp wit and so fast, and she's also like really good fun. She's a holiday camp entertainer. She's got all the banter. She can sell a song, and she's got a way with her audience. So that's great. But then I'm like, but Anne's just had a baby. She's really, really ill. Is the audience going to be receptive to that? And if we look at her from the outside, or look at what she looks like while she's ill, we might never actually get to feel any empathy or achieve any kind of understanding of what it means to face that illness or prejudice. And so then that's when I kind of made the decision to do what you're talking about. I decided to locate the audience inside Anne's head. So they are literally in there with her. So they're not seeing the reality, they're seeing Anne's version of it. So you don't just watch, you share her journey. And when she's confused, you're confused. When she thinks something's funny, you're laughing. So for example, at the start, she's really scared of her doctors. So the audience doesn't see NHS medics, they see jailers and they see guards. And then Anne becomes less paranoid, but as her fear subsides, her scorn rises. And now she thinks doctors are just like total idiots, can't help her at all. And that's what the audience sees, just a couple of buffoonic doctors behaving like squabbling idiots. But then Anne begins to trust people, medics, family, other women, her husband, and the audience hopefully starts that too. They start sharing the jokes and the music, and they feel that warmth and friendship. They're feeling the love. But from alienation to love is just this enormous journey. And of course, it's really compacted in a theatrical experience. So just as Anne will leave that psychiatric mother-baby unit thinking, what the hell just happened to me? That's kind of also how the audience should feel when they leave the theatre. And that's how you say you felt, and that's great, because that really makes us feel like we succeeded. You know, you were overwhelmed, you needed time to process it, and you aren't the only person that said that. So yeah, you know, thanks. That's a great reaction. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So Grace, I wanted to ask you, so Zina's talked a bit about that journey of recovery that Anne goes on, and how the audience go with her on that journey. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how you made that happen in the staging of the show. And I also wondered whether you really had to hold your nerve a bit about the beginning. It's a bit risky deliberately alienating the audience at the start, and so I wanted to ask you about that as well.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because when I first read the play, I was like, I remember my first instinct was just silence. And I think it was just because I just genuinely was like, that, until I got through, I just had no idea where it was going. And I kind of always go based on making sure I really write down what that first instinct is, because the audience inevitably are going to witness it for the first time pretty much. So you have to hold on to that before you like start getting too into it, before you leave it and you never get that first experience ever again. And yeah, basically, I think when I kind of was thinking about a bit of concept and how I saw it being staged and what, you know, I wanted to go into the room with and stuff like that, I kind of, the brilliant Sasha Gilmore, who was set designer for the play, and Will Alder, who designed the sound and light, I kind of was in a meeting with them and I said, I don't want the actors to ever go off stage, and I just want to lock them in the way Anne's locked in, and I want the audience to, every door shuts and the actors don't get a bit of relief as much as the audience don't. And I think that was a really big decision, because also I knew that I was going to have to persuade 3 actors that they couldn't go off stage, and that they needed to hold the play up as actors brilliantly do, and as these 3 actors did a great job of doing, and I'm in awe of what they did, because it was an absolutely, it was a big challenge of a play, and they took it and they went, okay Grace, and they ran with it, and I think that was a real joy. So yeah, we held our nerve in that first bit, and I think as well, like it's actually, it feels like it's so overwhelming, like there's so much happening, but actually the audience are just like with you the whole time. And I think as long as it's clear, I always say, like, my job as a director is just to make things clear, even if the thing itself isn't clear. So kind of the job of us was just to make sure that even if it felt totally unnerving and unclear, we still had a hold of the audience and we had their safety in our hands. And I think that that's an important role. So yeah, I kind of said to Sasha, should we just have everything happen on stage and just have complete transparency in the way that Zina's written the play, which is totally transparent. It is what it is, and you go through it and you learn about a character's recovery. So yeah, that's kind of where it went, really. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So I want to ask you, Sam, so we've heard a bit from Grace and Zina about Anne's story arc from this kind of paranoid, terrifying place towards a place where humour and music and friendship and love are possible. So I want to ask you how it felt for you to actually play that to an audience. And I'm curious about whether you could feel our initial confusion and whether you then felt us gradually warm to you through the piece.
Yeah, definitely, I'd say yeah. I think I went on such a journey in rehearsals where, like, when I first started, obviously I was like, yeah, this is going to make sense. And then you kind of have a week 2 wobble where you're like, oh my God, everyone's going to hate me. No one wants to listen to me. And then you come out the other side. And I think the first night was kind of exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. But as soon as I realized that the audience were there, not just in Anne's head, we literally had an audience too. It was so settling and stabilizing, despite the play not being, the beginning of the play particularly not being very stable at all. Just, and it all made sense, but it was trusting that it would make sense when they came in, and that could only be done by the whole team. Like, we all had to hold on to each other, because you never know until you're in front of the audience, and it literally is like a trial by fire. So you wait for that moment, and thankfully, soon as they do start to see as Anne sees, and it literally does happen at exactly the same moment, which is an incredible thing to write. So that's all brilliance to Zena, because to actually do that in a play where you're not ahead of the audience or the audience aren't ahead of you, and to actually just time it, and you could literally feel it go, is such an incredible piece of writing, but also as an actor, just an amazing feeling. Because Anne's like this mixture of a stand-up comedian and, you know, going crazy and crying and bonding with the puppet baby. It was a puppet, but became our babies. You know, there's so much in there, but actually just that feeling of connecting with the audience, and then all of us going through something together. I mean, that's kind of the theatre that we should want to be making, I think. The sort of theatre that can actually make a difference in that moment. Something happens in that moment, and that is the difference between theatre and, you know, film. Live theatre is everyone goes together in that moment, literally, and it was actually pretty incredible. I can't wait to do it again.
we can't wait to see it again. So Alice, I want to turn to you now. The striking thing about you and Simon actually is you both play these multiple parts in the play, and the range you both cover is absolutely staggering. It was incredible to watch. One minute you're playing those doctors who are just a lovely comic double act. The next, you're Mary, a young, tragically ill woman in deep psychosis, and that's a huge shift. I wanted to ask you how you prepare for that kind of multi-role performance. And out of the roles that you played, was there one that you liked playing most, or that you felt was most important?
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive challenge, but one that I was very excited to accept. I think each character, they brought different sides of me, or different excitement in me. But I think the way that I usually prepare wasn't the way that I prepared for this. Usually I use music to get into a character or so, but like Grace said, we weren't allowed to leave the stage, and actually hearing the reason why just makes it even more special, because we were all literally going through it together. So it makes sense that we didn't leave the stage. But a lot of research went into it, and I think just investing in the madness of the play actually made things a bit more normal. I think if we ever held back in telling the story, I think we might have tripped ourselves up a bit. But yeah, it was a lovely time, and I think, do you know, possibly playing Anne's mother, who is in the play called Vanessa, and she's in her mid-60s, and is spoken of a lot in the play, and you finally get to have a family scene towards the end of the play, which I think for me personally was really nice to do, because it meant that all three of us actors finally get to, you know, send off Anne in wherever she's going. And it was a lovely sort of experience to be like, we've told the story, we're ending it now, and we've done a good job. We've done justice to the play and to the stories that we wanted to tell. But yeah, massive challenge.
Thank you. So Simon, the thing that struck me, I wanted to ask you about, was that this play is so clearly rooted in women's experience. It's also made by a creative team and company that's female dominated. And what struck me is that several of my friends, male friends, only came to the show because their female partners wanted to see it, and I think they weren't expecting to relate to it or enjoy themselves, and were really quite surprised when they did. So that made me think that the whole idea that children and birthing are a kind of women's thing still seems to be pretty ingrained. And I wonder if being part of Afterbirth has made you reflect on that at all.
God, yeah. I mean, I'm perhaps in a situation where I might be trying to have kids, down the line, and my partner and I, we have a lot of friends who have struggled to have children, and then some who have had problems after birth, and it is it's massive. It's this time in my life, very much so. But like I sort of felt this guilt because I just couldn't. I was just in awe, really, of what I was seeing from Sam and Alice in terms of how they, how you channel it, and the emotional cost that I don't have, because we just, I don't have a lot of that, and I physically can't have it, and so it was. But yeah, God, and again, just going back to what you were just talking about, that whole notion of being there through it. Hadn't really thought about it until Grace put it like that. But like, I feel like I was very much part of it, part of that journey, like with them, like trying to offer some support for them. But like, there were times, and it wasn't, I didn't feel this at the beginning because it's not normally the way I work. But like, I think, like Sam says, that notion of actors being there throughout, and you actually seeing the process and actually seeing the cogs, because I don't really buy character. I'm not an actor who necessarily does character. I just have I used to, and then I've got older and I've sort of developed less in that way, and let the words and the page and this between me and this person kind of do that thing. And I loved listening. I loved being off stage and listening in character, but like, and really feeling like I was, because there were times when Sam was just there, like right next to me in front of the audience, and there's no focus on me, but there is kind of, because I'm sort of channeling. I was channeling to her a lot of the time, and with Al as well. Like, so I feel like as we went on, and all hail Grace, because Grace was like, you just got to like, you've got to trust the madness. And you just kind of got to go with those first 20 pages being what they be. But like, I used to try and like put some sort of sense into it. And actually that wasn't the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to just go with it. And I think like, and I definitely felt that. And like I say, as the only male in the room, you just try and do what you can. You try and offer what you can. But yeah, ultimately that was it. I felt like I was on that journey, very much on that journey with them.
Yeah, thank you. So before we finish, I don't think we can go before talking about the really extreme circumstances under which Afterbirth was made. You started rehearsing the show in May when COVID restrictions were still pretty tight. I want to know what it was like. It must have been the first time for all of you back in that situation. So what was it like making a play in the time of COVID? How did it affect the way you worked, if it did at all? And did it feel strange after 16 months of social distancing and lockdown to be doing something which was so intensely social, I suppose?
Well, I found, I've just, one thing that I'm so proud of with theatre is that it finds a way. And that sounds a bit weird, but it's one of those things that even if there is time, the time has passed, and socially, but the minute you start a scene, there's a connection, and there just was a connection, and it was just lovely, and it had been a long time, but I think we're so used to it, we're so up and down, we're so in and out of work, and you just, but the minute you start that first day, I remember a couple of times I just sort of had to check myself when it was hard work. You just sort of go, but I'm working. No one else is. Like, it's just such a rare thing to be on something like this. So it made me really appreciate even more. And but we had a great team. Our stage management was just incredible. And I think we started on the first day that you could. I think it was, I forget exactly what day it was, but you know, and you're so supported by your team. And then, but then actually when you start going, it's the same as it always is, and it just finds a way, you know.
Sam, did you want to come in?
Oh yeah, I think the most incredible thing about it was after doing the show to the audience for the first night, obviously, because we all came off and went, you know, there was an audience. We were in a theatre with people, and I think we were all really emotional. Also, the play's pretty emotional, but it was just that kind of like going, oh, theatre is so special. And you felt the audience going through that, as well as the journey of the play, going through the fact that it was live. We're all in a room together, sharing this incredible story that needs to be told. It's vital. And I think that I think when we all came off, we were backstage after taking a little bow. I think we were all quite emotional. And then obviously the next thing was, let's get a drink. But yeah, it was. Yeah, amazing team, amazing times. So yeah.
Grace, did it make a difference to the way you worked?
Yeah, I guess one really big thing to say, similar to what Simon has said, is that like Niamh Percy, who was our stage manager, would like actively kind of shout at me if I got anywhere near the actors. So obviously we did it in a way where the actors were in a bubble and then the creatives were in a bubble, so it meant that we had distance, and it meant that if anything had happened in terms of having to isolate and so on, it would work in the favor of the way the room was set up. And it was quite funny because you don't think about it sometimes. You just get like, especially when I get really excited about something, I think I kind of just want to jump and like rugby tackle someone to the ground. I obviously don't do that, but like basically that was what I would want to do. Niamh would be like, Grace, back away, and I'd be like, okay. But yeah, it was interesting. I guess in a really strange way, a freehander lends itself really nicely to that. It meant that there wasn't tons of people around all the time. There was a small group of us. It's a small company of people. It wasn't a massive show, so it meant that intensively in like we could work together, and it didn't really change how we looked at the script. It didn't really change anything like that. If anything, though, it did feel like for my brain it was quite a lot, but it's been a big year, so yeah, I think that's probably it. But yeah, Alice, did you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a lot to say also with the leading up to doing the production. Our producer, Emma Dolman, she, I think the way that the conversation of wanting to do the play and having to deal with the pandemic was done very well in terms of, you know, collectively us all going to Oxford, it not being so overpopulated, and, you know, having the parameters there, that means that we're doing it safely. And also in a creative way, I think, for me personally, not being able to, you know, get too close to someone meant that I had to work harder artistically with my words to make up for physical touch. So in some ways it was a blessing in disguise doing it in this sort of environment. But we managed to do it, and I'm thankful that we managed to do it. And it was the first play that I did since COVID, so it meant a lot as well. So yeah.
Alice, do you remember our first hug? It was amazing because there's a moment when Alice's character, the doctor, actually hugs Anne. And I remember we first did it, and Alice is a great hugger. I think I'm pretty good too. And it was such a glorious moment. Like, I never wanted to let go. We didn't really know each other that well, but it was just like
come here.
It was so wonderful.
I think everyone in the room is pretty jealous.
Loved it. It was amazing.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely. Thank you. So yeah, and as you just said, Alice, you made it. You made it, and actually you made it. It was fantastic. So I want to know what's next. 3 nights just isn't enough, is it? Zena, can you tell us about
Yes.
what's next?
Yeah, so one of the things that happened because of COVID is we had planned to do some pop-up performances in community venues to reach new audiences, but that was obviously not going to happen, particularly because a lot of the women that we wanted to show it to, the vaccine hasn't been agreed for pregnant women and breastfeeding women and stuff, so they were going to be in isolation for a lot longer than anybody else. So we made this film. We got this amazing filmmaker called Jo Elliott, and she's filmed the performance, and she's also made a 15-minute version for our academic partners. So we've got an 83-minute long film, and we don't really know, that's a conversation in progress about where that's going to go. But we've also got this 15-minute film, which is going to be used for a big national trial around health professional training around empathy, increased empathy in the health professions around maternal mental illness. So that's a really exciting development. But we've now got that collateral, you see, we've got that short film and we've got the long film. So our academic partners are really excited because they're thinking of all sorts of things they might be able to do with that film. PhDs around therapeutic use, all sorts of stuff around public engagement. So that's what's happening with the film. And then I think, Grace,
Grace, tell me that I'm going to be able to see it on stage again, please.
Yeah, so we're really hopeful that it's going to go on tour. We're planning for it to go on tour probably in 2022, hopefully. There's a bit of a backlog in the theatre world, but something to say is that it should be, it needs to go on again. I think it's a play that could really just really flourish and really be brilliant to be shared with multiple communities around the UK. So I think we kind of want it to tour. We don't really want it to just go to one place and stay there. So we'd really like it to go and be around as many different places as it can get to. And I think it's about reaching mothers, but also non-mothers, and just raising awareness about it as a whole, and also really looking at the stigma of what postpartum psychosis is and the stigmas that come with motherhood and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, let's get it into some venues, I think.
Thank you. Can I come with you?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll put that in the budget.